Hello there. Today that I'm recording this is Saturday, and Warriors of Chaos stuff is out, which is nice. So I finally got my hands on the Arcane Journal rather than doing Potato Cam. So I'm just going to quickly run through it. I'm going to do other videos. I'm not playing rugby today, so I've got time this afternoon where I won't be broken and drunk. So I can anyway, shut up, Dan, get on with it. Right, so Warriors of Chaos, they've got two sub-factions. One's called Wolves of the Sea, the other one's called, basically Ever Chosen, Heralds of Darkness, that's what it's called. Personally, I think the Heralds of Darkness is a very, very, very lazy sub-faction. It doesn't seem to actually do anything. I'd be very surprised to see it in tournaments. There's no Wolves of the Sea, right? Full of character, full of like flavour. Heralds of Darkness, they're like, well, it's like, well, isn't this what Chaos looks like anyway? You might see some people take it if they're running it like a predominantly knight-based list already. So if they've got lots of knights and chariots and stuff, they might as well put it in Heralds of Darkness because, well, fundamentally, you get an extra rule for no cost. But to me, it's very, very lazy. I'd much rather they did like a kind of a sort of a monstrous cult sort of thing. So like a sort of halfway in between warriors and beastmen, that sort of thing. That would have been quite cool. There's loads of things they could have done. Chaos is never ending. So anyway, let's talk about the Wolves of the Sea. So selection wise, it's the typical percentages, apart from the fact that rare can be up to 33%. So you're only allowed one Chaos Giant per 1,000 points, though. So that means in a 2,000 point list, you can't have 3 Chaos Giants, which I find very disappointing because that's literally the only reason I'd take this. I mean, I know why people would love the Wolves of the Sea. I'm not a massive fan of the whole Marauder aesthetic. I much prefer the Chaos Warrior aesthetic. So personally for me, I'll probably never take Wolves of the Sea. But it is really good and really interesting, and some of the lists you can build are pretty good. I'm going to do another video on list build and like what value everything is. I'm just literally going to go through the rules with this and maybe comment a little bit. And give you some opinions. So this one, I think this is a better restriction on characters, and I wish the Warriors of Chaos main list had these restrictions. So you're allowed 0 to 1 Chaos Lord, Demon Prince, or Sorcerer Lord. That's basically your general. So your general is allowed to be one of those lords. At the moment, you can, with the normal Warriors of Chaos, you can take a Chaos Lord and a Sorcerer Lord, because the normal, usual restriction is 0 to 1 Exalted Champion or Sorcerer Lord per 1,000 points. So they've swapped that up here and put the Sorcerer Lord in this 0 to 1 top thing, and 0 to 1 Exalted Champion or Exalted Sorcerer. That means you can't, in this faction, take a Chaos Lord and a Sorcerer Lord. You can, however, take a Demon Prince, which is kind of halfway between both of them. In that it can be a wizard, but from a wizardy perspective, no, it probably is better than a Sorcerer Lord, isn't it? Yeah, well. I mean, it is better in terms of its stat line, but it's not better in terms of the fact that it's monstrous infantry or cavalry, and therefore can't really hide behind the army or hide in units or whatever. So 25% has got to be spent on Marauders, Marauder Horse, Marauder Tribe Berserkers, which are new and in this book, and Chaos Warhounds, which I quite like. Chaos Warhounds, they're pretty good. I haven't got any handy. And then you're allowed up to 50% on Chaos Warriors, going special. Chaos Chariots, Skin Walls, Huskarls, and Spawn. I don't think you're ever going to see Chaos Warriors in a Wolves of the Sea list, because they're not that good, really. They're only really good for containing wizards if you've got some points spare and some warriors spare. And that's the playstyle. You see my video last week on the meta and have a look at Rob Syme's list. Really interesting. And then rare, you're allowed all the monstery things from the other book. You're allowed 1 gigantic Chaos Spawn for 1,000 points. I really like these. They're super cheap and I think actually quite effective. And Dragon Ogre Shaggoth per unit of Dragon Ogres. So 0 to 1 Dragon Ogre Shaggoth per unit of Dragon Ogres. So you've got to take a unit of Dragon Ogres to take a Shaggoth. And then you're allowed 0 to 1 giant, as I said. And then mercenaries, you're allowed Gauls and Ungauls, which is interesting. But I don't think this really gets you to like halfway in between Beastman and... because you need some kind of beastie sort of character. Anyway, shut up, Dan. The special rules that you get for complying with these selection criteria are favour of the gods. So if a character within the Wolves of the Sea army kills their opponent in the challenge, they must immediately roll. They're not may. So if you have a character that wins a challenge and kills their opponent, they've got to roll on the Eye of the Gods, which means stupidity or something cool. In addition, should a unit with the Wolves of the Sea claim a standard as a trophy, that unit may immediately make a roll. So if you take a standard, you can have a roll. Now, basically, that the Eye of the Gods table is if you roll a 1, you become stupid. If you roll a 2 or a 3, there's an effect that lasts until the end of the turn, like +1 initiative, or what's the other one? +1 toughness, I think. They're both defensive, basically. And then 4 to 6 are aggressive. So 4 is +1 weapon skill. I think 5 is +1 attack, and 6 is +1 strength and leadership. But 4 through 6 last for the rest of the game. So incredibly powerful ability. Imagine if you like took 2 standards and you got a unit of they're not like Chaos Knights, are they? That's but you've got Huskars. So but imagine like a unit of like strength 7 or strength 8 AP2, knights, horsemen, and it applies to the unit. I'm not sure whether it applies to mounts. I sense not, but I think it doesn't apply to mounts, does it? Seaborn Raiders, units of Marauders and Marauder Horse can be ambushers for 1 point per model, and aspiring champions may have ambushers for 10 points. So you can basically turn more or less your entire army into ambushers, which is pretty cool. And then you got Warriors Duel. I mean, you wouldn't want to do that in a game, because essentially your opponent would get themselves ready they'd basically block off all the board edges, apart from one bit, which is where you'd be able to bring on a small unit, which then they would charge off and destroy. So you wouldn't want to do that, because your army would come on and then it'd get pushed off, and then you'd basically get tabled probably by the end of turn 4. So ambushes isn't something that you want the whole army to do. There's because you can't charge when you ambush. That's the problem. Instead of rolling off to determine, so this Warriors Duel mechanic has been talked about a lot. Basically, at the start of the game, you can choose one single wound unit champion to face off against one of their single wound unit champions, and if you win the duel, you get to go first, or you count as having won the roll off for first turn. So I think in all scenarios, it's whoever wins the roll off goes first automatically. I don't think there's a choice. And if you lose the duel, then you go second, basically. So that's pretty cool. And also the model's dead. So you've killed one of their unit champions before the game begins. And again, then you get to roll on favour of the Eye of the Gods table, because of this favour of the gods thing, if you win. The issue is, you're not allowed chosen knights. So that would be, the obvious thing to do would be to get a unit of chosen knights in the army and make one of the champions really good. There's a magic item that helps in challenges, which but you can't do that. So the best champion that you're going to have is basically a Chaos Warrior champion, out of everything that you've got available. Maybe Marauder Tribe Berserkers, I don't know. So although it's a really cool rule, if you're thinking about the model that you actually have to use it with, it's not that good. Because if you're coming up against somebody like, for instance, Bretonia, we'll talk about Bretonia because the Bretonian prayer thing interacts with this quite interestingly anyway. But so, for instance, if you're playing up against a Bretonian player, they're more than likely going to have a Grail Knight champion who's, pretty defensive and quite strong. It doesn't say, so that they don't count as having charged in the first round of this challenge. So that's pretty good, because that means you don't get lances. There is a note at the bottom here, and I can't zoom in because it's a bloody e-reader. GW, just send us PDFs, please. This is so painful. That's another thing I should probably say at this stage is, if you're 50-50 as to whether you want, I mean, I always buy digital books because I just prefer it. It's that I can carry them in my phone. But if you're 50-50 as to whether to get the digital or the hard copy, definitely get the hard copy, because like some pages in this book, they're not rendering properly, like they're coming up at this size rather than, it's just rubbish. Maybe it is my e-reader, but maybe you need to try some others. But the way that the problem is they do it in like, what is it, version or third edition EPUB v3 or something is how they publish them, which means everything's encrypted and it's an absolute bloody nightmare. And I did have some software for anyway, shut up, Dan. Right, so the Warriors Duel Bretonnian. How does it work with Bretonnians? So Bretonnians, you've got to accept the challenge in order to get the blessing. So if you accept the challenge, then you get the blessing. You've prayed. Obviously, exiles don't, because whatever. Oh my God's sakes! Oh, they haven't. Sorry, I haven't. I've read all the rules like over and over because I wanted this to be like 100% accurate for once. They've not actually put in here, I'm sure this will be FAQ'd, they've not actually put in here that exiles don't get the blessing. It just says, should a Bretonnian army accept it, then they count as having prayed for the blessing of the lady. Now, exiles can't pray, so it's not, I'm sure some spawny git will try it on with somebody. But anyway, so if you're allowed the blessing, I would say, so if you're Errantry Crusade or a standard Bretonnian list, then you count as having prayed when you accept the blessing. Now, if you're a Bretonnian player, you accept the challenge with your Grail Knight champion, and you defeat their whatever they've put up against you, then you get to go first and you get the blessing, right? That's how this rule works. So all you have to do is accept the challenge to get the blessing, which is why I really doubt anybody would try this up against a Bretonnian army, because you'd lose the first turn, which is actually quite important, and you then give your opponent the first turn and the blessing, which is supposed to be the penalty behind them getting their ward saves. So it's a really super cool mechanic. It's going to be dependent upon your opponent as to whether you do it or not in a competitive setting. Although, maybe the problem with Warriors of Chaos, right, and this is the big problem, is that they only have heavy armor, right? If they had full plate, they'd actually be quite good. But they only have heavy armor, which makes them really difficult to use. Because, like, if you give them great weapons, they've literally only got heavy armor. If you give them halberds, again, in combat, they've only got heavy because it requires two hands. If you give them hand weapon and shield, they've only got one attack, which isn't great. Considering the base size, it's quite... yes, they get one attack at strength 4, AP 1 magical weapons. That's all really good. But how expensive they are and how many... Anyway, we're not talking about Chaos Warriors. But that's another discussion for another day. Heralds of Darkness. Bedecked in twisted grandeur and carried upon great steeds, or something. Right, Heralds of Darkness. Yeah, so army composition-wise, it's standard, apart from you've got to have 33% in core. You're allowed to take one chariot as a core choice, so you're not allowed a chariot list. This is like a typical... GW have done this with pretty much everybody so far, so they've done like an Errantry Crusade, which is basically all mounted. It's not, but it more or less is. They've done an Orc and Goblin faction, which is all mounted. They've done like the Expeditionary Force, which is quite quick. Lots of gyrocopters, so not all mounted, but getting there. It's sort of the Dwarves version of that. And this one is the all-mounted version of Chaos Warriors. Except the rule is that everybody has to be mounted, and we'll come on to that in a sec. So you're allowed, it's standard hero composition, so same as the normal Chaos faction. So you've got a limit on the Lord or Demon Prince. Sorcerer Lord is now limited to 1 per 1,000 rather than 1, and it would be instead of the others. You've got aspiring and exalted champions. Your exalted or aspiring champions can be the BSB. Sorry, that's something I've failed to mention about the Wolves, in that you could make your Marauder Tribe Chieftain a BSB if you like. Then you've got your limitations are, well, obviously any infantry is now gone from the core choice, but the rest of the core choices are pretty much the same as a standard, apart from you can slip a chariot into there. Now, personally, for me, there's no point doing this 0-1 Chaos Chariot and then 33% core, because basically slipping a chariot in there is basically it more or less gets you anyway. I'm sure you see what I'm driving at, in that, you know, rather than having to spend 500 points on core in a 2k list, you now have to spend 660 points on core. However, you can take a Chaos Chariot, which is what, 120, 115, 125, something like that, and it with a mark anyway, you know, which is more or less the additional 160. So like, why not just leave it at 25? Or just put 1 Chaos Chariot must be taken as a core choice. Or it's weird why they've done that. So you've got a minimum limit of 1 on Chaos Knights. You're still limited to 1 unit of Chosen Chaos Knights. I thought they were going to lift that 0-1 unit on Chosen Knights and maybe make it 1 per 1,000, so you could have 2 units of Chosen Knights, which would be really cool. But they decided not to go down that route. You're allowed 0-1 Chosen Chaos Chariot, so they've decided to introduce this Chosen Chaos Chariot unit, which is a bit weird. We'll talk about that in a bit. You're allowed Spawn, who aren't mounted, but you can take them anyway. You're allowed Dragon Ogres, which technically aren't mounted, but again, the Spawn and the Dragon Ogres just don't make sense in this wholly mounted faction, because you got Gorby's Chariots, you're allowed a Shaggoth per unit of Dragon Ogres as usual, Gigantic Spawn, Chaos Giant, 0-1 per 1,000 points, and you're allowed 1 0-1 Warpfire Dragon, which we're going to talk about later. Could Wolves take a Warpfire Dragon? No. Interesting. Their special rules are all characters must be mounted or have Fly X. They're allowed to... So when a unit whose troop type is Chariot or Cavalry makes Charge, Flee or Pursuit, it may reroll any natural ones before discarding any dice that are required to be discarded. So that does mean you can't reroll ones on Swift Stride, because you've discarded dice already, and therefore you can't reroll natural ones as written. I mean, I think they probably didn't mean that, but you know, whatever. I think what they're trying to say there is you can basically reroll ones like before getting rid of dice. So if you're rolling 2 and discarding the highest, but I don't know why they wouldn't let you reroll ones on Swift Stride, to be honest, because it's not going to make that much difference. And then the third special rule is a limitation, in that if you have a Mark of Chaos on a character, you've got to have a Mark of Chaos on a unit, and that's the limitation. So in order to have a character with the Mark of Khorne, you've got to have a unit with the Mark of Khorne. The Shadow Grows, I wish this was a universal rule for Chaos, because the sort of the flavour behind like a Chaos army is that you've got a Lord and they've got their own little retinue. So if you cast your mind back to... oh god, it's stuck to the table. Oh jeez. If you cast your mind back to... I'm going to show you something very old now. If you cast your mind back to this gem, lovely box, apart from the fact it's got a hole in the middle of it for some reason. But if you cast your mind back to that, it was all about building like little retinues of stuff, you know? I'm going to do some proper nostalgia bait for you here, but like, you know, it's all about building your own little, you know, retinues. So, you know, between like characters and, you know, all sorts really. But this was in the days when chaos meant all of it, so you could take demons and beastmen and everything came in chaos. Yeah. Can anybody remember the Iron Hard skin? Oh, love that. Anyway, I'm nostalgia baiting myself, I think, more than anything. Right. So we got. Yeah. So I mean, I really like this as a limitation, but I think it should be just all chaos has that limitation. But you know, whatever. It's just for Heralds of Darkness. Do you know what? I might actually take Heralds of Darkness because I've got like. How many nights have I chaos nights have I got? I've got like I must have like hold on 30, 40, nearly 50. Yeah, probably about 50 chaos nights, I think. I'm not sure. Boxes and boxes of plastic crack everywhere around there. So I'm not. Anyway, special characters. We got Frydaal. It's probably not. It's probably a biblical pronunciation, yeah, rather than the sort of the more Mesopotamian kind of like Baal. It's probably not Baal. It's probably a sort of a long R. So Frydaal the Chainmaker. I mean, it's basically Frida with an Al. Frida Al. The Chainmaker is an exalted champion. She may be included in any Warriors of Chaos army made using any army composition that includes this option. So she can be taken pretty much anywhere. She makes a unit of Marauders and Marauder Horsemen ambushers for free, which is cool. She's a heavy infantry model. She's also 235 points, which is a little steep. So she's not going to be a sort of a selection that you're going to take lightly. You're going to have to invest, but you can make Marauder Horseman ambushers for free, which is cool. And also she can modify the ambush roll result so that they, you know, if you roll a 3, you can make them come on. And if you roll a 4, you can hold them off for another turn. Basically, that's how that mechanic works. Berserk. Hold on. Yeah. She's got this thing called Storm's Wrath, which is like a flail, but only has AP 1 and has magical and extra attacks D3. So on the charge, or in the first round of combat, she's all right. She's strength 7, AP 1, no armor bane. You know, that's okay. Lots of attacks. She does an impact hit. She has chaos armor, so she's got full plate and shield. You know, she's the only exalted champion in all of chaos that has access to full plate armor for some reason. For some absolute dumbfounding reason, aspiring and exalted champions aren't allowed full plate armor, which is very annoying because I kind of want like an aspiring champion to go in like my unit of chosen knights, to be honest. But then I can't do that. Well, I can, but then you've got a character with a 3-up save and a unit with a 2-up save, which is just ridiculous, despite the fact that the aspiring champion is supposed to be more elite than the chosen. Whatever. We've got this Chainmaker rule, which I'll talk about in a second. Commander and Captain, we'll talk about that in a second. She's got ensorcelled weapons, so she's got a hand weapon which is AP1 and magical. So if Storm's Wrath gets taken out for whatever reason, then she can use a normal hand weapon, which essentially, apart from in the first round of combat, she just loses the extra D3 attacks. Oh, and because Storm's Wrath requires 2 hands, she actually gets to use a shield. So she's a bit of an interesting character, really. You'd be better off making Storm's Wrath not require 2 hands, so then she actually gets to use a shield, but whatever. Because Storm's Wrath is like is a magical weapon, she's got to take that over the mundane weapon, and the mundane weapon is the hand weapon, so she never gets to use a shield unless somehow somebody turns off a magic weapon. Now, I think there's only like 2 or 3 abilities in the game that can do that, so that's never going to happen. So, anyway, she's got this Chainmaker thing, which means that if she or the unit she's in captures standard, you get 100 points instead of 50. That is quite cool and could swing you some games. But again, she's only infantry, so limited use, really. Infantry units are probably only going to capture 1 standard per game, if that. Remember, they've got to kill or catch the unit that's charged into them. So if they get hit by cavalry, they probably won't kill them all. And, do you know what I mean? So it's limited use. That might get you an extra 50 victory points in a game. And unless she's fleeing, units of marauders, horsemen, huskars, so basically marauders all get +1 leadership whilst within her command range. She does have Gaze of the Gods, so her leadership can go up, so she can become leadership 10, sorry. But 10's obviously the maximum a stat can be. So, you know, she's okay. I wish they made her better, though. Or made her make a bit more sense, because there's a few, like I've said, there's a few things that just... Why? And why give an infantry unit, like, impact hits? Do you know what I mean? Like, why give a unit of infantry impact hits? Why not give her a stomp? That would be really cool. Anyway, then we've got Galrauch, the Great Drake, the first Chaos Dragon. So basically, dragons all used to be like high elf allies. Now they're pretty much the servants of the high elves, but they used to be like a race unto themselves. And they you know, allied with the high elves eventually, but in there against the great tide of chaos. So this is before humans had really rocked up. So many years ago. Anyway, in one battle, a Lord of Change decided to get killed by Galrauch. However, the Lord of Change was a bit sneaky, and then when he got killed by Galrauch, it instead just possessed him, and then the head split, and that's where all Chaos Dragons come from, is Galrauch. Anyway, you'd expect him to be better than a level 4 wizard, but he is a level 4 wizard dragon, which is pretty cool because he's got toughness 6 and 6 wounds, so he's he's okay. He's a behemoth and a named character, so you can challenge him out, which is a bit rubbish, but so he's got Wicked Claws, which are like, so his attacks are pretty much the same as like a normal Dragon of Chaos, except he's Strength 6 instead of Strength 7. I think a normal Chaos Dragon's Strength 7 off the top of my head. I think a normal Chaos Dragon has a slightly better stat line. But anyway, he's got this... he's got Armoured Hide 1, so he's got a 3-up armor save, which is, you know, it's alright, it's pretty good. He's got a 5-up regen, no ward. Yeah. It's 465 points, which you might think is cheap. However, he's got to take a leadership test at the start of every turn, and if he doesn't, if he fails it, then it's worse than stupidity, because his level of wizardry goes to 1, and he can only cast 1 spell a turn. He becomes subject to random move 2d6 instead of, you know, the fly 9, I think he's got. Fly 9? Fly 10. He's quite quick. He's a quick boy. Yeah, so 2d6. And if he's in combat, he must direct d3 of his attacks against himself, rounding any fractions down. What that means is, if you roll a 1, he doesn't attack himself. If you roll a 2 or 3, he directs 1 of his attacks towards himself. If you roll a 4 or 5, he directs 2 attacks towards himself, and you need to roll a 6 in order to attack himself with 3. Because what they're saying is you round the d3 down. Normally up, because, you know, that's maths. But in this case, we're rounding down. He's got the 2-headed dragon thing, which is exactly the same as the normal dragon. All of his attacks are the same. Apart from, he's got this really super cool Breath of Change, which is a breath weapon again, once per game. You put the flame template, you know, wherever. The template must lie entirely within Galrauch's vision arc. Any model whose base lies underneath must take a toughness test, and if they fail, it's dead. Just plain dead. No armor saves, no wards, no regens, just dead, which is really cool and could have a massive impact on a game. So that's breath of change is possibly. So if you think about it, right, if you've got like a unit of dragon princes, you can position him so you've lined up like 5 or 6 of them. You might kill 2 or 3 just with one breath weapon, which is really good. Again, if you manage to light up like a unit of 6 Grail Knights, which more or less nearly all fit under the template, then you're probably going to kill 2 just with that. So really, despite the fact that they might have a 5-up ward and a 5-up regen and like a 3-up save and blah 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 blah, no, ignore all of that, just dead. So that's a really, really decent ability. And it's a level 4 Wizard Dragon thing, which is pretty useful. And obviously has the mark of Tzeentch, so you can use the Tzeentch magic missile spell thing, which is D6 plus 3, strength 4, AP 2. I think flaming as well. So there's a lot of utility that you can get out of Galrauch. I'm really tempted by it. There is a 3-dragon build in that you can take a Lord on Chaos Dragon, you can take Galrauch, and then you can take a Warp Fire Dragon in a list, which is pretty cool, and I am really tempted, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, that's Galrauch. Then we've got the new Marauder Tribe Chieftains, which only come along in the Wolves of the Sea. It's a pretty standard chieftain. He's got a hand weapon and light armor. He can take a shield. Can't take heavy armor. I mean, it's basically it's almost an aspiring champion with light armor instead of heavy armor. Like, it's sort of in between. Yeah, that's basically. I mean, it's got Gaze of the Gods, got Chaos Armor 6-up, so it's got a 6-up ward inbuilt, which is pretty cool. But 6-up save, 6-up ward with 2 wounds. Is that really, really massively worth it? It's just a marauder. It's a marauder chieftain. Like, I don't know what to say. It is a cheap rallying cry, which actually for marauders might be quite useful. Yeah. Marauder Tribe offers you the chance that you can do Marauders, Marauder Horsemen, and Chaos Warriors. You could. Yeah, I mean, I should have brought. Anyway. Yeah, and then it can take a Warhorse, which gives it countercharge, fast cavalry, and swift stride. Oh, yes, because Huskarls have got countercharge, haven't they? Yep. Then we've got Marauder Tribe Berserkers, which are sort of Marauders with toughness 4 instead of 3. More points. They do have Frenzy, obviously. They've got this Relentless Warriors rule, which they get a 6-up ward against non-magical enemy attacks. I mean, yeah. The Marauders with toughness 4 and a 6-up ward, basically. And they've got... I don't think normal Marauders have moved through cover. Yeah, and they got Warband, which, yes, there's the leadership thing, but you're more likely to use that to reroll charges on your skirmishers than... people often forget that Warband allows you to reroll charges. It's really, really good. So, yeah, they're okay. And the movement 5, I guess, which makes them a bit quicker. I mean, for 8 points, they're not terrible. But Frenzy can be a bit of a problem, especially on infantry, because you can bait them out so easily, which is probably why they need Warband, so that they can more or less guarantee an 11-inch charge. Because if you're rolling 4 dice, which you would if you're re-rolling a charge, then your chance of getting a single 6 on 4 dice are actually pretty good. Skin Wolves are great. Strength 4, toughness 4, decent weapon skill, decent move. They have swift stride as well, so they're basically just super heavy cavalry, more or less. They count as monstrous infantry, but with movement 7 and swift stride, you're in cavalry territory. They've got 3 wounds each. They have regen 5-up, but they don't have any armor save. normally. However, when the unit's combat is chosen, they can decide to sort of go for more claws, which means the AP of their weapons. So they've got their claws and fangs just count as normal hand weapons. So basically, within large claws, they get AP 1 and armor bane 2, which is all right. They can go for an extra attack with the barbed protrusions. Or you can make them toughness 5 and give them basically heavy armor, which is all right actually. So I mean, the toughened flesh, you might see that being used quite often. I mean, yeah, I mean, they're okay. I mean, 45 points each. They're not massively expensive for what they are. So yeah, they're pretty good, and the models are lush. So you're going to see a lot of those because the models are great. They're not amazing. They're not like game breaking, but they are pretty decent. Oh, and the unit size, I hadn't spotted that before, is just 2 up, so you could just take 2 of them in a unit. So you could have a Jarl and his missus or her husband, depends which way around you want to. Depends which way around you want to label that. Anyway, then we've got some Marauder Tribe Huskarls. These are Marauder Horsemen that are better. So they've got Toughness 4, which makes them better already. They've then got Counter Charge, which makes them excellent, especially with Movement 8 and Swift Stride. They can take Cavalry Spears, although they can take Flails, so you'll probably just take Flails, because Cavalry Spears are like +1... is it +1 strength and AP on the charge? +1 strength, AP 1 something on the charge. Whereas flails are like +2 strength in the first round of combat, but AP 2 all the time. So flails are infinitely better. It's a pretty decent unit. I mean, you can make them drilled, which is pretty good. And the first sword can take... They can take a mark as well. First sword can take magic items. The banner, yeah, cavalry spears, banner. Oh, they can take a magic standard. Yeah, sorry, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, so they can take a magic standard up to 50. So you can make them really good. So you can make this really, really decent. You can make this into a really decent unit. They keep saying you can mix bits from the Chaos Warrior and the Marauder kits. I mean, it's difficult. You could go for the Chaos Warrior helmets, but you kind of need them for your Chaos Warriors. So, like, when it says representing this unit, you know, like I do with my Chosen, I just tell my opponent, I don't actually have any Chosen models, I just say that unit's a Chosen unit, that unit isn't. And they go, okay. So, like, yeah, just say to your opponent, they're Huskarls, they're not. I mean, if you really want to sort of ham it up, just paint the banner, like, really nice. Just give them a massive banner. And I think that's the best way of, like, making a unit look better, is by making its banner better, if that makes sense. Make its banner a bit more grandiose and making the champion look a bit beefier, maybe. Then we've got these Chosen Chaos Chariots, which are basically chariots with extra attacks for the charioteers. So it's exactly the same as a normal chariot, but you've got the charioteers have 2 attacks each rather than 1, with strength 4 halberds, pretty decent. Yeah, everything else is exactly the same. Oh, counter charge. No, it isn't, because I'm almost 100% certain that the standard Chaos Chariot does not have counter charge. No, it doesn't. Wow. So you get to do impact hits when you get charged. They're really good now. Yeah, counter charge. That is so good. Actually, it's not just the extra attacks; it's the counter charge, isn't it? Why did I not spot that before? Anyway, they're really, really good. Yeah, because you can put them out in front and, like, you know, your enemy, because it's a heavy chariot, so it gets d6 plus 1 strength 5 impact hits, and as long as you roll a 2 on your counter charge, I mean, if you roll a 1, you're buggered, because, so basically when you counter charge, you get to move up to D3+1 towards your opponent. It only works against everything that's not infantry, basically. So if you get charged by infantry, it's your own fault for being so slow. But against everything else, you can get a bit of impetus and countercharge it. So basically, you can put these things in front of your army, and they can then take the charge from like the enemy cavalry and stuff like that. And even dragons have got to be a little bit scared of getting slapped with D6+1 Strength 5 AP2 impact hits. So these are really good, considering that the normal chariot was like 120, 110. Sorry, it's 120 with the mark. That's what I had in my head. And this is 150 with the mark. So it's an extra 40 points for basically an extra couple of attacks plus counter charge. Is it worth it? Like, I suppose if you've got a chariot heavy army, I suppose actually if you're going for the mounted thing and you need like a screen of stuff that's going to protect your army, these are pretty good because you get to do their impact hits. But if you think like a unit of Pegasus Knights charging into it, like, do you know what I mean? You're going to get like what on average probably four impact hits, 3 of which are going to wound. You're probably going to kill a Pegasus Knight with that whole countercharge ability. And then actually, like with 4 wounds, toughness 5, and AP and armor value 3, your opponent's going to struggle to kill it. Like it's not a dead cert. Like even if they've got like 4 or 5 Pegasus Knights, like yeah, because four of them attacking, it's not 100% certain that they'd actually kill it back. So yeah, it's really good. I like those. But I think they're kind of situational because there's better screens for like normal chaos, but you can only take these in a Heralds of Darkness list anyway. Characters, yeah. So you can put a Lord, Exalted Champion, or Aspiring Champion on it. You can't put a Sorcerer Lord on it, which is a bit rubbish. But then we've got the Gigantic Spawn of Chaos. Now, first off, I love the model. I think it's great. There's so many modelling options for it. Like you could essentially get your Mutalith out and call that a Gigantic Spawn of Chaos if you wanted, because that's kind of what it looks like. Or the other one, the Slaughter Brute, is it called? I think Slaughter Brute. So you could call that a Gigantic Spawn of Chaos. There's loads of like different models that they've released for Chaos over the years. There is the Gigantic Spawn thing, which has got like weird kind of mantis things that are pointing the wrong way on it. But anyway, it may be one of the following, and you probably are going to upgrade it to one of the following. So its basic stat line is really good. Toughness 6 and 6 wounds is really good. With heavy armor, means it's actually more survivable than the giant, and is a lot cheaper. It's not as quick as a giant, however, because a giant's got like movement 6, so giant can like march 12, and then you can use the battle magic spell to make it go again. This, of course, would on average move 10, but could sometimes move 3, and could also move 18. So is equally likely to move 3 and 18. So this isn't reliable in terms of its movement distance. However, because it moves in the compulsory movement phase, there's a lot of shenanigans that you can do with it to get it into combat where other units couldn't. So, for instance, it's really good for protecting flanks because its random movement, means that you can do stuff like charge things that aren't in your aren't in your vision arc, which can catch people off because you just move into combat and therefore that counts as a charge. You know, it doesn't have to be, I've said that and now I know that's probably wrong. But I'm pretty certain that, where's the rule book gone? There. So the random movement, and it's the random movement thing is it's up to, so you don't have to move that far. Where's movement in detail, basic movement phase? Where's the bloody thing? Who can blah 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 random? Oh, it's a It's not so good. Um, Demon Forge barging is interesting. Give your cavalry extra attacks. Give your horses extra attacks. The arcane items are all pretty good. So Bearer of the Scepter of Power gets +1 modifier to cast or dispel. However, if there are any doubles, they get hit with a Strength 10 AP3 hits. So, you know, if you've got something like this, which is a Sorcerer Lord on a chariot, you know, that's not terrible because A, it gets a save, but you've probably also upgraded yourself to a 5-up regen and a 5-up ward as well. So it's probably not going to hurt, and they get +1 to cast or dispel. And 1 in 6 of the times they're going to roll a natural double. So, you know, it's probably going to happen 3 or 4 times a game. But you might actually save the damage anyway, so that's not terrible. And essentially the negative consequence has made it 55 points for +1 to cast or dispel, which isn't bad really. Grimoire of Ogvold, essentially you know all 7 spells from your chosen law of magic. However, they can only cast a number of spells equal to their level of wizardry. So if you're level 4, you can cast 4 spells per turn, but you know all of the spells in the so again, it's another way of not rolling for spells. It is 50 points, which is quite pricey, but you know, if it knows all 7 spells from the chosen law of magic, including the signature spell. So if it's got a mark of chaos, you can hypothetically swap one of those spells for your... So for instance, if I gave the grimoire to this level 4 wizard and made it Tzeentch, I could take the Tzeentch spell and know everything from battle magic, and then I could swap Curse of Arrow Attraction for the Tzeentch spell. So that's potentially pretty deep. However, I can only cast 4 spells a game per turn then. The one I really like is the Tome of the Dark Gods. So it's models with undivided only. The bearer of the Tome of the Dark Gods may discard any number of their randomly generated spells. For each spell, they may select any spell from the Law of Chaos as if they had the corresponding mark of Chaos. So this is what I'm doing with a Spell Familiar, because a Spell Familiar is only 15 points and extremely common. So this then knows 5 spells. I'm going to roll on Battle Magic because I basically want Column of Fire and Move Again. So that's why I've gone for 5 spells. But then, actually, of the Law of Chaos spells, they're all really good. The Nurgle one is remains in play +1 toughness, so this goes up to toughness 6. T6, 3-up armor save, 5-up ward, 5-up regen chariot. It's pretty tasty. The Tzeentch spell, as I've said, is an 18-inch magic missile, strength 4, d6 +3, strength 4, AP2. The Slanesh spell is a bit meh. It's like Strike Last or something, but it's a hex with like a 2-inch range or something ridiculous. It's not that, it's like 8 or something, but it's all right. The Undivided spell is the unit. It's a hex with like I think a 21 or an 18-inch range, and it's -1/-2 to their movement, something like that. And of course, I've closed the bloody thing. I'll just show you, actually, it's easier, isn't it? But yeah, these spells are, Strike Last 12-inch range, yeah. So you've got to be within, so I guess on a chariot it's okay, but there's better spells in Battle Magic, right, than that. This one, 21-inch range, -1 move, or -2 move, which, again, if somebody's lined up to charge your cavalry and they're like on the edge of their charge range, you can make them -2 move, and then that means you can get your cavalry so that you're gonna slap them and get the charge off on them. So that's, I think that's really good. So I think that's about it. Oh, have we got some enchant? No, that's it. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool magic items that can make your list really interesting. There's some really interesting like monsters. The Chosen Chariots, I think, are really good. Skin Wolves, the models are great and the rules are okay. There's some Marauder upgrades. There's a Galrauch, which I'm not sure why. I mean, I guess out of all the models, that was probably one of the later like named characters they released. There's also all the stuff like Wulfric that they can't do because he's not even born yet. So they've made up Frydaal. I don't know why, to be honest. I don't know where she fits into anything or why she's even there. But anyway, apparently, if you read the lore, look at that. Bloody, why can't they get the pages to scale properly? It's defective. Yeah, apparently this is what's happening. So this is the narrative. So Frydaal and her friends have all sort of invaded this area here. So there's some Wood Elf action, there's some Empire action, and there's some Bretonnia action here. There's also some Orky action because the Wasteland is quite Orky. So that's what these sort of skull and crossbones mean. So everybody's involved in this conflict, of course. There's some beastmen lurking around in the forests too. So anybody can get involved really with this narrative. So that's why they've done it here. Well, apart from the High Elves, they're not there at all, are they? There's no High Elf fortresses. No. So yeah, I mean, actually, overall, like, if I were to give it like marks out of 10 as a book, like 7, 8. Ooh. There you go. That's the time now when I'm recording it. I mean, I don't know. I wish they'd have made the Hell Cannon better because it's just rubbish. Like, the rule set is rubbish. I think the only way you can really use the Hell Cannon is actually as like an unbreakable, horrible dealer of death in combat, and basically barrel it into the opponent and then hope it blows up. And that's probably the most impact you're going to get out of it. Your opponent's also going to keep clear of it because they know it can blow up at any time and do a lot of damage. So it's good for like blocking off a flank basically and just going hell for leather down the flank. But anyway, that's we'll talk about that when we're talking about lists. I think that's everything. But I think B it's a solid B, this book. Yeah, but that's about it. So if you've liked the video, there's a button for that. If you've got this far through the vid, I'd hope you'd consider subscribing. That would be lovely. And if you've got any opinions or if I've got anything wrong, Grimgore, there's a chap who always, I assume chap, who always comments called Grimgore. He's a bit of an oracle when it comes to the rules. He's very good at correcting me. Anyway, if you've got any comments, I've responded to all my comments so far, so plan to keep that up. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you again soon. Toodaloo.